What if Jules Bianchi had the halo? Could Ayrton Senna still be with us today? What about all those crashes from the 60s, 70s and 80s? How many would have, could have, survived? F1 is safer now than ever, but sadly we wouldn't have these safety standards without the countless tragic accidents over the years. I always wonder what could have happened if those crashes occurred today, keeping in mind that now we're seeing drivers walking away from things like this. Today, we're gonna try and answer that. And first, we need to go back to the 60s. Just to give you an idea of what F1 was like back then, well, it looked something like this. Simple, charming, nostalgic. I could describe it in a bunch of ways, but safe for sure isn't one of them. Safety wasn't even a thing back then. Death was just part of the game. And if you wanted to race in F1, you had to accept that. Drivers would jump into these aluminium cars, no seatbelts, rocking an old school open-faced helmet, on tracks surrounded by trees where barriers and runoff areas were pretty much non-existent. An example of all these disastrous ingredients coming together, September 10th, 1961. The setting, Monza's classic layout we all know, but mixed with a 3.1-mile oval with crazy banking, making it a 6.2-mile circuit. Insanely fast, and just as insanely dangerous. I mean, just look at this. Interesting, right? Wolfgang von Trips, driving for Ferrari, leads by 4 points over teammate Phil Hill. On Saturday, he grabs pole, while Hill qualifies fourth. Everything seems set for von Trips, who could become the first German champ before the last race. Sunday's a perfect day, and drivers have 43 laps and 250 miles ahead to give it their all. The Ferraris have a rough start, while Jim Clark, who's in P7, quickly catches up to them. On the first lap, we see the first crash, with Jerry Ashmore going off at Parabolica and getting hurt pretty badly. But it's the 60s, so the race just keeps going like nothing happened, with Hill in the lead, followed by the other Ferrari of Richie Ginther. Meanwhile, Von Trips is fighting with Graham Hill, Jack Brabham and Clark for P4. On lap 2, they're flying towards Parabolica when suddenly Von Trips bumps into Clark, and they both lose control at over 150 miles per hour. Jesus fucking Christ. Von Trips slams right into the spectators, flips over and spins out of control, getting thrown from the car. A total disaster. Somehow, the race just keeps going. The docs get there fast, but sadly, there's not much they can do. Von Trips passed away on the spot from the huge impact after being thrown from the car. Sadly, they confirmed that 11 spectators lost their lives, and 3 more were seriously injured and passed away later in the hospital. One of the worst tragedies in Formula One history. Hill won the race, and it wasn't until he got out of the car that the team told him what happened with Von Trips. He took the title, but neither he nor Ferrari raced in the season finale in the US out of respect for Von Trips. But what would have happened today? Well, fortunately, many things have changed in F1 since. Right after that, the FIA banned F1 from racing on tracks with steeply banked corners. I mean, they were just too dangerous, as shown by Ashmore's crash. Von Trips got thrown out of his Ferrari because he wasn't wearing a seatbelt, which wasn't even mandatory until 1972. Crazy to think something so basic took so long. Today, with 6-point harnesses, there's no way a driver will get thrown from their car. Also, the open-faced helmet didn't do much to soften the blow. Full-faced helmets didn't come until 1968 and finally became the norm in the 70s. But honestly, Von Trips' crash was so nasty that it's hard to say if a full-faced helmet would have made much of a difference. What would have made a huge difference are the safety barriers we've got now. Back in the 60s, there was barely a metal fence between the cars and the spectators, who were often right behind it. At best, there was just a bank, so a lot of times it was pretty much inevitable for cars to end up in the crowd. It wasn't until 1970 that they put in double impact barriers and made sure there was at least 3 meters of space between them and the stands. It's safe to say that an accident like Von Tripp's is simply impossible today. Now, accidents where 2 cars bump into each other and lose control just end with a hit on the barriers and 2 angry drivers yelling at each other.
Heading into the wall at high speed. Sainz and Perez make collision.
You see that beard, man? What the?
Luckily, nothing like back in the day. Even with all those new safety measures, as well as flag signals, fireproof suits, and cockpits that helped drivers escape faster, the 70s was still an insanely dangerous time. Honestly, and as I've argued in quite a few of my videos, I'd say even more. Because yes, we have more safety measures, but boy, did we get more speed as well.
Those cars were all effectively a mobile bomb because in an accident, the fuel went everywhere and caught fire.
Look at how many drivers lost their lives during this decade. Absolute insanity. One of the saddest and most remembered fatalities was Francois Sever in 1973. The 29-year-old French driver was racing for Tyrrell and played a big part in helping Jackie Stewart win his 3rd title before retiring. Sever was ready to take over after Stewart left.
Of course, it was a question of whether I was going to retire or not, because it was already been speculated in the media, and of course if I retired he would be number 1, he thought.
But in the last weekend of the season at Watkins Glen, everything changed. It was Saturday, and Sever was fighting with Ronnie Peterson for pole. Trying to beat his time, Sever pushed the fast right-left uphill section called the S's as hard as he could and hit a bump from the curbs.
Who is it? Oh no. How bad is it?
He went off at 150 miles per hour into the barriers on the right, bounced back across the track and slammed into the other barriers at a 90-degree angle, ripping and breaking them. The crash was so hard that the cockpit broke in 2. Just tragic.
Francois Sever had a bad accident.
It was the most horrible sight. I wouldn't want anybody to see that ever.
Sever's crash shows how F1 back then was missing a lot of basic safety features we have now. The cars were still made of an aluminium monocoque, stronger than in the 60s for sure, but no survival cell, and so easily breakable. With the survival cell coming in, and then carbon fiber in the 80s, cockpits got a lot stronger and safer. Plus, the halo would have kept him safe from any head injuries when hitting the barriers, along with the full-face helmet. And of course, just like in Von Tripp's crash, one of the most important things would have been the safety barriers. By the 70s, they were around, but were mostly made of rigid steel or concrete, which, let's be honest, wasn't the smartest material. It wasn't until the 2000s that the FIA introduced tire barriers to improve energy absorption in crashes, and they've kept improving ever since. Modern barriers like the Tech Pro are way more advanced, designed to absorb the energy with materials like foam and rubber that compress and deform when they're hit, reducing the force on the driver. That, along with the bigger runoff areas we have today, would have really helped absorb the impact of an accident like Sever's and prevent his tragedy. Even though the 70s brought some major changes like stronger and taller cars to protect drivers, fire-resistant suits, or moving the fuel tank between the engine and the driver to reduce impact, it still didn't stop a lot of fatalities, even in the 80s. With just a couple minutes left in qualifying, Gilles Villeneuve on old tyres pushes hard to improve his time and most importantly beat teammate Didier Pironi.
Io ero obbligato a lasciarlo andare a fare un altro tentativo.
Prima non mi era mai successo che lui chiedeva i tempi di tutti, ma si vedeva che non era più lui. Aveva perso la sua innocenza.
Then, flying through the fast to Lammenbocht at over 125 miles per hour, he catches up to Jochen Mass, who's on an outlap and going super slow, with no time to avoid him. The Ferrari goes flying into the grass, smashes into the wall and spins several times until it's pretty much destroyed on track, with just one wheel left. And Villeneuve Well, that's the most shocking part. The seat came off and flew with him, landing about 50 meters away from the car in the barriers and without a helmet.
E lì noi siamo seduti e pregavamo.
Honestly, one of the scariest things I've seen.
Vedi qualcosa con un peso morale quando accadono queste disgrazie?
Ma io interrogo profondamente me stesso e mi chiedo quale responsabilità può aver avuto la macchina.
Would modern safety features have saved Villeneuve? Well, even though Villeneuve's Ferrari had a carbon fiber and aluminium honeycomb monocoque way stronger than Sauber's, it was still a long way from the modern ones. McLaren was the first team to use carbon fiber in their car in 1981. This made the cars much stronger over time. A full carbon fiber monocoque would have stopped Villeneuve's car from breaking apart like it did, probably keeping his seat from flying off with him. The halo also would have made it harder for that to happen, stopping the seat if it had come loose for any reason. And of course, the helmet would have played a huge part too. Villeneuve was wearing a rare strapless GTA model with a twin horseshoe clamp to keep it closed, but it obviously failed and left his head totally exposed. Helmets have only gotten better since then, using high-tech materials like Kevlar and carbon fiber for insane lightness and strength. Nowadays, they even use Xylon in the shell, which is even stronger than Kevlar, and can protect from projectiles hitting at over 150 miles per hour, so there's no way it would have fallen off Villeneuve's head. A somewhat similar, more recent accident to Villeneuve's was Kubica's in 2007.
Horrible accident going on there. He's moving his hands.
He flew off, crashed into the barriers, and spun several times, but the chassis stayed mostly intact. All safety measures worked as they should, and Kubica only ended up with a sprain. It's safe to assume a similar outcome for Villeneuve with today's standards. 1982 was a tough season, as just months later we lost another driver, rookie Riccardo Pelletti.
And one car, it looks like one of the Azellas, has hit very hard the back of Peroni's car. And Riccardo Pelletti, the young Italian in the Azella team, and the car's on fire.
F1 had to do something, and they did. They stepped up their game to improve safety in every way possible, like making crash test rules way stricter, adding rescue training, and introducing detachable steering wheels. By the 90s, cars were way more advanced and stronger. Tracks also looked a lot more like what we have today. It finally felt like F1 was safe enough until the 1994 San Marino GP happened. For many, the darkest weekend in F1 history. On Friday, a young Barrichello slammed into the wall at 140 miles per hour in a terrifying crash. I have no idea how, but he only ended up with a small fracture in his nose and a dislocated rib, which was nothing compared to what could have happened. But on Saturday, rookie Roland Ratzenberger wasn't as lucky.
We have just had the very sad news that he has succumbed to his injuries.
It was the first time that we have to face a dead Formula One driver for our generation.
Ratzenberger's tragedy left everyone in shock, reopening all questions surrounding driver safety. By Sunday, the tension was through the roof, but the weekend had to go on. After a rough start to the season with his new team Williams, Senna starts from pole, with Schumacher and Berger right behind him. Right at the start, an accident brings out the safety car. Back then, the safety car wasn't as common as now. It had only been around for a year, and this was the third time it was ever brought out. By the end of lap 5, with the driver's tyres colder than my heart if you don't subscribe, the race is back on. It's on lap 7, where everything changes again. Senna, coming up to Tamburello, goes off at 190 miles per hour and ends up slamming into the wall at 130 miles per hour. His Williams bounces into the gravel, completely wrecked, with Senna motionless.
We got him out of the cockpit, got his helmet off, and got an airway into him. And I saw from his neurological signs that it was going to be a fatal head injury.
We all know how this ended, leaving F1 in mourning and marking a major turning point in both the sport and safety.
Beijo, Senna. Eu te esquecerei nunca mais.
Eu tenho tanto medo quanto qualquer outra pessoa de me machucar, sobretudo guiando um carro de corrida. O perigo é constante.
What exactly happened? Could something like that be avoided today? The accident's been looked into a million times, but no theory fully explains what happened. Some say the cold tires made the car's floor hit the track, causing the ground effect to disappear.
Maybe it was the tire temperatures that made the car skate straight off the road. It will always be a mystery.
The Italian authorities who looked into it said the cause was a faulty modification of Senna's steering bar by Williams.
Houve uma causa? Houve. Mas o que eu acredito mesmo é essa quebra na barra da direção. E o carro ficou incontrolável.
Either way, everyone pretty much agrees on what caused the Brazilian's fatality. The right front wheel came off and it hit his helmet, while a suspension arm went through the visor, causing close to fatal injuries. It was Senna's head that was exposed. Nowadays, the halo probably would have protected Senna's helmet from the wheel and suspension arm. Plus, the Hans device, introduced in 2003, would have seriously reduced the neck strain when the car came to a sudden stop. Another key thing would have been the wheel tethers, to stop tires from flying off in crashes. All of this together probably would have meant a different outcome for Senna's accident. The Tamburello corner where he crashed, where drivers hit over 180 miles per hour with no runoff areas, got turned into a chicane. F1 learned a lot from that weekend in Imola, making big changes over the years in pretty much every area. Honestly, I'd say that in the following years, the sport went through its biggest transformation. After all sorts of crashes, but no more fatalities, it almost seemed like Senna would be the last. But sadly, tragedy hit in the sport again 20 years later. With Typhoon Fanfone over Japan, the conditions are awful, and even the emergency helicopter cannot fly. But still, no one thought, hey, let's cancel the race, because what could go wrong, right? No words.
Going to happen today, unless they've got floodlights akin to Singapore. But away we go, with the safety car leading then, Nico Rosberg on pole, and Lewis Hamilton on the front row, away from the grid. Ready to pounce, isn't he, Martin? He's ready to get going, and as they put the foot down, we can get going in a couple of seconds time.
After a few calmer laps, the rain picks up again on lap 36. Lots of drivers start making mistakes and going off track. One of them is Ayrton Senna, who loses it at the Dunlop corner on lap 42 and crashes into the barriers.
Safety car, Ayrton Senna has gone on.
Everything seems pretty normal so far, but what happens next? Just surreal. With a yellow flag out, a crane tractor, yep, you heard that right, goes out to remove Senna's car with a few marshals. Meanwhile, the other cars are still trying to stay on track. Exactly, a disaster waiting to happen. No fucking way. One lap later, Jules Bianchi goes off at the same corner, slamming straight into the crane tractor at more than 75 miles per hour. Bianchi's Marussia is completely destroyed. Only now does the safety car come out. Bianchi is rushed to the nearest hospital. Yep, in an ambulance.
So he's gone to a nearby hospital. He's left the medical centre here. Obviously, with this weather, he could have got there quicker with the medical helicopter, but with this weather, of course, I don't think it ever got in.
After several days of uncertainty, it was confirmed that Bianchi's body took a brutal hit of 254 Gs, and he had a diffuse axonal injury, one of the worst brain injuries you can get. He was put in a coma and moved to intensive care, then transferred to his hometown in Nice 2 months later. Sadly, he never woke up.
Formula One driver Jules Bianchi has died.
He was just a great human being, a very humble guy. He left such a mark in the sport and will be remembered forever.
Rest in peace.
Yeah, obviously he's going to be missed a lot.
At just 25 years of age, Jules left us on the afternoon of the 17th of July, 2015. Unlike most of the accidents I've shown you, Bianchi's tragedy wasn't really so much about the car on track safety, but simply horrific procedures. Having a crane right by the track during a storm with no safety cars was a fucked up decision that should have never happened. The worst part is, this wasn't even the first time drivers had to come close to hitting a crane tractor. Bad decisions and procedures have always been a part of F1, and thankfully after this tragic accident, a lot of changes were made, and they introduced the virtual safety car so drivers couldn't keep racing in situations like this. With it, Bianchi's tragedy could have easily been avoided. The big question everyone always wonders is, could the halo have saved Bianchi? Well, the deceleration from the crash was so brutal that it destroyed the whole airbox of his Marussia. The halo likely wouldn't have held up either, so it probably wouldn't have made much of a difference. But I think we can all agree that the halo has been one of the best things to happen in recent times. A perfect example of how safe F1 is now is Joe's crash at Silverstone in 2022, when this happened right at the start.
George Russell out of this race, who's finished in the top 5 in every race this season, but he's out by the time they get to turn 1.
If you thought flipping over was the worst that could happen in an F1 car, being stuck there upside down between the fence and the tyre barrier has gotta be even worse. Luckily, all safety features worked perfectly. Everything helped Joe walk away without a scratch, which shows how safe F1 is these days, and honestly, I'm so fucking glad it is. Obviously, danger will always be a part of F1, and it's unacceptable that big changes only come after tragedies. But looking back at these heartbreaking crashes, it's pretty clear that F1's safety has come a long way, saving so many lives since then.
What the fuck was that? How did he jump out? That's an act of God.
It was a miracle. It was absolutely a miracle.
And yeah, we might joke about the FIA sometimes, well, a lot actually, and they fucking deserve it, but we should really appreciate everything they've done and keep doing to make the sport we love safer and safer. I know this video isn't exactly the happiest one I have, so if you want to up your mood a bit, watch this one. And as always, thank you for watching.